It is Thursday, 13th of June, 2024. Welcome to the God 7.0 video. I've got a feeling this series could run and run, probably for the rest of my existence in this realm, in this particular body, however long that may be. I'm here with Old Faithful again, the microphone, which I've used for pretty much every piece of mic work I've done over the past 30 years. So I used to take this out in the clubs as a DJ, and I've done pretty much every podcast and video interview over the past 15 years using this mic. I think I'm going to auction it off soon, actually, and get myself a new one. Anyway, with this particular video, I want to turn a bit of a corner because regular viewers of this series will be aware of how I'm feeling now about the true nature of this realm and what force may have created it. So I don't need to keep laboring those points. There is going to be new information and things to reinforce messages which have been put across in previous videos. But I really want this one to start looking at some solutions. So you reach a point in conspiracy research where you study the nuts and bolts, the fine detail, the dates, places, names, methods and tactics by which social engineering and mass mind control and subjugation of the entire human population takes place. So you get to learn about secret society networks and Freemasons and the Bilderberg Group and the Council on Foreign Relations and Tavistock and MK Ultra and all this stuff. And you reach a point where you've accumulated enough information to have a handle on what's really going on in this world. And if you just stay within that conspiracy realm, you then start to want to look at solutions. So this is where we find people forming community hubs and little cooperative groups and voluntarist societies and working on ways of unplugging from the system, from the matrix, from the control grid, and becoming self-sufficient, becoming sovereign, and things of this nature. And when you start looking at the spiritual subjects, as I've been in these videos, eventually you reach that point as well, where you want to move beyond focusing on the problems, the hardships, the challenges that we all face, and you want to start looking at some solutions. So in this context, the biggest concern is, okay, so if this realm really is presided over by some sort of malevolent demonic entity, how the hell do we get ourselves out of it? Particularly at the point of so-called death, where we leave these bodies and we leave this dense, energetic reality and move on to whatever lies beyond. We're going to want to make sure, to the best of our abilities, that we go to the right place, that we make the right decision, that we're not tricked and deceived and coerced into the worst nightmare of all, having to come back to this place and do it all over again in a new body, in a new guise. What a ghastly bloody prospect that is. So this video is going to be quite a long one because I'm going to tack onto the end of it a video interview that I did 10 years ago with a guy named Wayne Bush. So Wayne was well ahead of the curve, and in 2014 he had his website Tricked by the Light, where he was putting forward this theory that at the point of death, what we refer to as death, our souls are tricked or coerced, or the attempt is made to get them to enter the tunnel of light that so many near-death experiences report goes on, and get recycled and spat back out on a conveyor belt into this nightmare reality where our louche energy, all the fear and the trauma and the anxiety and the worry and the stress that is cultivated in this realm by design, gets fed upon by these entities that supposedly, according to the theory, use this stuff as sustenance. So Wayne Bush was putting forward this idea 10 years ago, and I came across it then. And so I did a Good Vibrations interview with him in 2014, where he went into this whole theory in some detail. And he was referencing some music and some aspects of popular culture which seem to be subliminally communicating these ideas, these themes. So I thought it'd be interesting for people to take a listen to that interview 1 decade on, in light of the many researchers now, the many commenters and YouTubers and pundits who are getting into these theories and putting forward these ideas. So I'm not necessarily stating that that's where I'm at with everything. I'm not necessarily stating that I think he's bang on the money with it. I'm still agnostic in that sense. I'm still seeking the answers. I'm not throwing it out. It remains a possibility, albeit an unsettling one. But I'm offering this interview at the end for people to, as with all things, make up their own minds about how they feel, because I think these are the most important questions and subjects that anyone can be addressing. Yes, I know there's serious stuff going on in the world. I know there are major threats to our freedom and our rights and the welfare of our children and our loved ones. And I'm very glad that there are many commenters and researchers who are talking about all this stuff. But in all honesty, I'm feeling a little bit jaded and a little bit worn out from talking about all that stuff myself. I remain a researcher into the true nature of the music industry, and that is going to continue to be the main focus of my work with upcoming books, upcoming talks, presentations, and upcoming podcast appearances. But in terms of geopolitical stuff and conspiracy stuff that's going on in the world, there's just so much of it that I don't feel that I can comment on that and keep up to speed with all the nuts and bolts, mechanical details of it all to be able to offer any meaningful context. So I leave that to others. Where I'm at now is considering these spiritual, theological questions. I've heard it said, since I've started putting out these videos, that Mark Devlin doesn't love God. That's a comment that some Christians have made. Again, I've not received any correspondence from any pissed off or offended Hindus, Buddhists, Jews, atheists, only Christians for some reason. This is not a Christian hating video. None of my output is. But many people who have identified as Christians have made the comment that I don't love God. So I think a good starting place to get things going on this video is for me to just address that one. When I consider the creative, generative force that put into place things like the movement of the sun and the moon, the rhythmic cycles that they complete throughout a day, throughout a month, throughout a year, and throughout a zodiacal age of 2,160 years, and then the great year, so-called, of 25,920 years. The movement of the sun through the different zodiacal signs, houses, 12 of them. Whatever force put that into place and created that beautiful rhythm and synchronization is worthy of awe. It's absolutely dumbfounding that any kind of entity or force could have created something so perfect, just working in symphony with everything else. So I love whatever God that was. When I think of some of my favorite places in the world, I love the Scottish Highlands. I get up there whenever I can. The mountains, the lochs, the valleys, the scenery, the landscapes just leave me breathless in terms of how beautiful and majestic they are. So whatever force created all of that, I love. When I think of things like, well, Niagara Falls is another amazing place where all that water cascades over those falls every single day, and it never runs out because we've got a system of aquifers and the whole water table, which ensures that there's a never-ending supply of water, just goes through these cycles within the earth. Whatever force created that is incredible and wonderful and gets my respect and gets my love. So if you want to label that creative force, that entity, God, then I do love God. Here's the flip side. When I think of whatever entity, whatever force created a realm in which fear, pain, suffering, trauma, worry, stress, anxiety, regret, grief, loss, where all those things seem to be built into the very fabric of the existence, ensuring that every human soul that incarnates here undergoes those experiences to one degree or another. Do I love that entity? When I think of what some unfortunate people are forced to endure, and I've researched things like satanic ritual abuse, generational trauma-based mind control, where children are born into these situations where they just don't stand a chance. From the very earliest age, they are submitted to the most horrific trauma imaginable, the stuff of your very worst nightmares and beyond. When I think about whatever force created that realm, can I have any love for it? Absolutely not. Is there a contradiction here? Am I saying in one breath that I love God and in the next that I hate God? Or are we talking about different entities here? In the first examples, could I be talking about the original creative generative force that put into place this realm of existence? And with the latter examples, could I be talking about some other force, which is all about anything but beauty and majesty and all this, but actually thrives on pain, fear, trauma, suffering, and has created a construct where there's a never-ending supply of those things, and where good people who try their best to take personal responsibility for the way they conduct themselves in their relationships with others are made to suffer hardships the better they try to be. I think this is getting to the crux of the issue here. It's a fundamental mistake to assume that there is one God and that it's the force that created everything. It goes back to themes of earlier videos. The idea that this realm, this construct that we find ourselves in for whatever reason, because none of us know, none of us remember, we get this mind wipe, or we certainly can't remember our very earliest months and years. And it goes back to that metaphor that Eric Dubay so brilliantly put out there a few months ago, where he said, imagine a bunch of people on a boat out at sea. They wake up one day, they find themselves on the boat. They have no memory of how they got there. Nobody else does either. They don't know where the boat set sail from. They don't know where it's going. They don't know who built the boat. And they don't know how to navigate the boat. And they just have to try and figure it out. Is that not the perfect allegory for these lives? Is it not evidence of an entity that doesn't have our best interests in mind, that doesn't care for us and love us and want us to thrive and prosper and flourish? Or is it more emblematic of some sort of malevolent demonic force? I think that's what we're talking about here.
Nancy! Nancy! Come on. Nancy! Nancy! Where are you?
Jonathan! Jonathan! Jonathan, I'm right here!
Nancy! Nancy!
Jonathan, where are you? Jonathan! Jonathan! Jonathan, I'm right here!
I'm right here! I'm right here! Nancy! Just follow my voice!
Jonathan!
Follow my voice, Nancy! I'm right here! Nancy! Nancy! Nancy, follow my voice! Nancy?
So the implication is that we're living within two worlds at the same time, within two worlds which have come together as one. And this was brilliantly portrayed, I feel, again, in an allegorical way, in the Netflix TV series Stranger Things. I've referenced Stranger Things many times in my talks and videos because I think it tells us a lot. Get rid of all the nonsense with the monsters and all the kind of goofy 80s retro stuff. We need to get right down to the crux of what that show was telling us. First of all, it told us a lot about MK Ultra mind control and the way that works with the character 11, who was raised in one of these MK Ultra labs. But also within that show, in the narrative, we've got the concept of the upside down. So for anyone that's not watched the show, this is a kind of hell world, this kind of dark parallel existence, which is there at the same point in space and time as what we consider regular reality. So you have characters who can disappear into the upside down, and it's a dark reflection of what the other characters are going through. And the characters can interact with each other because they're actually in the same space, but it's a parallel kind of existence, which is there alongside the other one. So is that not another metaphor for the kind of reality that we find ourselves in? We're in a sort of upside down. We're in a sort of dark underbelly. We're in a sort of hellish reflection, like mirror-like reflection of real creation, original reality. So that's always there. That's why we have things like the beauty of the sun and the moon and their cycles, and the beauty of mountains and scenery and all these breathtaking things in nature. And it would also explain why we have consciences, because most people do. I did an interview this week with Dr. Mike Yeadon, former executive with Pfizer, who has become a whistleblower, and has become very outspoken in recent years about the true nature of the pharmaceutical industry, of which he was a part for many years. So, very brave, courageous man. We need many, many more like him. The reason he has come forward, and at great risk to himself and at great loss to himself, because he's suffered a fair bit as a consequence of speaking out, the reason he felt to do that is because his conscience was prodding him in the ribs and saying, you shouldn't be doing this. You've been a part of something bad. You know stuff that is going to help people, and you need to get it out there. And like I say, we need more people like that. Of course, in the world, there are a small number of psychopaths, sociopaths, and narcissists. And there's really no helping these people, particularly the psychopaths, because they're never going to have a conscience. They're not capable of considering the consequences of their actions and the impact they might have on other people. But the vast majority of humanity are not psychopaths, sociopaths, or narcissists. I feel most people are basically decent. We know the difference between right and wrong inherently. It's there within us. We know that we should be living by the code of do not treat others in a way you would not wish to be treated yourself. If you wouldn't want something done to you, don't do it to other people. It's that simple. And we know that. So on occasions where we do something that we know is wrong, we shouldn't have done it, it's causing harm, with most of us, it bothers us. That's your conscience kicking in. That's the fail-safe mechanism that prevents us from just doing whatever we want and to hell with the consequences. We know right from wrong. We're born with that knowledge, most of us. So is that not indicative of the fact that originally we came from somewhere based in good and love and empathy and compassion? That's our true nature. But we found ourselves in a realm which doesn't reward that stuff. If you display those things, you get punished for it with struggles and hardships and problems that are placed in your path. The coding of this place, if we use the sort of virtual reality CGI simulation allegory for a moment, sees to it that those kind of expressions, those kind of behaviors don't get rewarded. They get punished. I'm not trying to put anyone off from living that way. On the contrary, the central message here is that we should continue to live according to those rules. Do no harm. Do not treat others in a way you would not wish to be treated yourself. That is the code by which we should be conducting ourselves, no matter how much hardship and suffering we may reap as a result. Particularly if we want to get ourselves out of this realm. Maybe that's the key to not having to repeat these experiences, not having to get spat back out into this place. If we can earn our way out of it through good deeds, even in spite of all the struggles that they seem to bring, that's something worth striving for. So are we living within two realities at the same time is my question. And the answer, I feel, at this point in my research is yes, that would explain a lot. We are divine sparks. I've heard that notion put forward many times. This was part of the Gnostic belief system, where that group believed that this realm was indeed presided over by a demonic entity. It's known as the demiurge in some traditions or tellings of the story. It's known as Yaldabaoth in others. It's known as Rex Mundi by the Cathars, who had a similar sort of belief system. I think we need some new songs, actually. We need some updates. So the Bee Gees' song You Win Again should be re-recorded as Yaldabaoth Wins Again, because it always seems to, doesn't it? And it's probably time for an update of the Boomtown Rats famous song, which should be re-recorded as I Don't Like Rex Mundi's, because who likes that thing, whatever it is? But, you know, joking aside, it would explain a lot. We're divine sparks. We come from somewhere out there, and it is basically a good place. That's why we have consciences and the inherent knowledge of right from wrong. But we find ourselves in a realm where it's so easy to get led astray. It's so easy to be coerced down the wrong path, where you become selfish and you become narcissistic and you don't really give a shit about anything else or any other living sentient being. It's just easier that way, isn't it? It's easier to navigate your way through this place, through these lives, just thinking about yourself and just worrying about your own material needs immediately at that point in time, and those of the ones you care for, and everyone else be damned. It's easier that way. And whatever force is presiding over this place wants more of that. So it becomes an act of rebellion, of resistance, not to give it, doesn't it? In a realm where loose energy, expressions of fear and trauma and everything else, is fed upon by demonic entities, if that's what's going on just outside of sight on an unseen level, how much more of a rebel can you be by giving it your very best to not contribute any of that stuff and to fly in the face of it by attempting to live within the values of empathy, compassion, and consideration towards others? Seems a pretty good way to live to me. So in the rest of this video, I've got another feedback section where I'm going to be reading out some comments that people have sent in that have appeared in the comment section of the videos on the different platforms that I've posted on. Also, I want to read out an abridged version of an article where the writer is giving his or her views on just how we can exit this reality at the point of so-called death. I mean, that's the ultimate solution. And I found some value in this article. Again, not necessarily nailing my colors to that mast, but I think it's worth putting this stuff out there and seeing what people think. I'm going to finish off with that Wayne Bush video, as I say, but at this point, I want to insert a video piece from David Icke. Some people will groan, some people will feel to reach for the keyboard and start typing, he's a shill, he's a gatekeeper. Not interested in anyone's opinion of Icke. I won't be reading any comments that anyone makes about him. Whether they like him or not, it's not important here. What's important is the message that he's putting across. So listen to the words. If you don't like David Icke, forget that it's him, and just consider the ideas and the themes that he's putting across here. I hope people will find value in this. I did. Here it is either way.
All around the world, you see this recurring theme in different cultures, and it's described in different ways, but exactly the same in theme. We have a force, an expression of this Wetiko that takes a reptilian form. And the cultures around the world, again and again and again, when they're doing their creation myths, then some kind of reptilian, lizard-like, snake-like entities are described. So if you take the biblical version, you have Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. And Adam and Eve are symbolic of, first of all, what humans were like before what became known as the fall. What the hell was the fall? The way I've seen this is that there was once not something that you'd call human. It was a state of consciousness that was experiencing a world, a frequency band that was like the one we're experiencing, but on a much higher level of awareness, consciousness, frequency. So things weren't happening in dense matter and low, slow frequencies. They were happening on a high frequency. Things were much more ethereal. And that, I think, is what's described as this paradise that went before. And so Adam and Eve were cast out of paradise. What does that mean, I would suggest? They left that frequency level where what we now call humans were experiencing. A world of love, of joy, of happiness, of all the things that happen when you get into high frequency states where so much more is possible. And they fell, the fall was down the frequencies into dense matter. And the villain in the Garden of Eden that is said to have been part of this, or central to this, is the snake. People have to think symbolically. I mean, this is not a snake that can talk. This is symbolic of this reptilian group, not just one person, this reptilian group, these reptilian gods as they were perceived. And they fell down the frequencies, Adam and Eve, symbolic of what's now humanity, because they gained the knowledge of good and evil. What is good and evil? It's polarity. It's the polarity that we see in our reality now. That level that we fell from was oneness, it was unity. And we fell into the knowledge of good and evil, the knowledge of polarity, which is what this world is. And my view, and it has been for a lot of years now, is that what Genesis is describing is the takeover of human perception by this reptilian force. And the God at the start of Genesis that is creating the world is actually an amalgamation to deceive and misdirect of the gods, the reptilian gods. And what's being described is not the creation of the world, but the creation of the simulation, the matrix. And so when we hear lines like, and God said, let there be light, and there was light, I say what's being described is electromagnetic light, which is basically what this simulation is. And I said just after the turn of the millennium that this is a simulation, and the walls of it, certainly at our level anyway, are the speed of light, which is not the fastest speed possible. That's a joke. We're dealing with all possibility here. That's the fastest speed possible. It's a joke. It's the speed of the matrix of the simulation. And there was an article in Scientific American in April of this year where some academic said, we live in a simulation and the walls of the simulation are the speed of light. And he was relating the speed of light in simulation terms to the processing speed. Because what is physics? What is the law of physics, as we call it? It's whatever the creator of the simulation decided it was going to be. What are, in effect, the laws of physics of computer games? They're whatever the creator of the game decides they're going to be. But as this article pointed out, you can create the laws within your game, but you're still going to be limited by the processing speed you're dealing with. And that's why the speed of light is this faster speed. That's why when people have near-death experiences, they leave the body, which is locking us into the simulation through the five senses, and they experience a totally different version of physics, where past, present, and future all kind of happen at once in the same now. But within the simulation, we have time, we have all these other illusions, which are the creation of the simulation. So you had this treasure trove of documents that were found at Nagamadi in 1945, about 75 miles north of Luxor in Egypt, which was an earthen jar of the writings of the Gnostic people. And it's reckoned that they were put in that jar 400 AD, something like that. And about a fifth of these writings were about what they called archons, which is Greek for rulers, who were manipulating human society. And what they say in these writings is that this world is a fake world. It's a fake reality created by this archontic force to enslave humanity in an illusion. I went through all of them, and what you see, they're describing a virtual reality universe. That's what they're describing in their own language, what we would call today virtual reality. One of the great things today is that because of the technological advancement, so-called, we've now got the analogies and the experience of virtual reality to actually describe what this reality is.
I had a strange dream about David Icke the other night, actually. For some reason, I mean, I don't really remember my dreams for very long, so I wrote this one down. I was in Bangkok, Thailand. Why? I don't know. But we'd both been booked to speak at this conference event. And for some reason, the event got raided. I don't know if it was police or some sort of rebels or whatever, and it got shut down. And I can remember David Icke got paid for the gig. He was getting a wad of banknotes given to him. And I was told, get out, it's not safe, you've got to go. And I never got paid. And it kind of harks back to my DJing days. It reminded me of situations where I used to get booked to play at the same club events as people like Trevor Nelson and Tim Westwood. And promoters would often say to me, what's the least amount you could do it for, mate? Because Trevor Nelson's management are absolutely caning me on his fee. They want 10 grand for him to do his set. So could you do it for like 25 quid? Because I've really got to save money here. So, it was the same sort of idea, and it was probably a subliminal harking back to some of my experiences in my DJing days. Anyway, either way, I want to get into the feedback section now. So I'm going to read out some comments that people have sent in. And many of these are in response to the messages put out in previous God videos. So first off, greetings, Mark. Your God presentations are excellent. Let me make a long story shorter to clarify a key point. You logically and legitimately question how an omnipotent, omniscient, good God could allow an inferior, bad God, think demiurge, to hijack his creation and turn it into the hell it has become. There were numerous Gnostic sects in recent times. Only a small minority of them believed this. True Gnostic thought posits that this cosmos, this universe, this earth, the entire material realm has always been the province of the demiurge, and it was totally his creation from inception. The uncreated, unknowable God, the entity with no beginning and no end, never had anything to do with it. One of his emanations, Sophia, spawned the demiurge, a tragic and cosmic mistake. Even though the uncreated eternal God was not responsible for this abomination we find ourselves in, other of his emanations, such as the main one, Christos Lucifer, the light bearer and liberator, have been dispatched to free us from this celestial prison so we can return to our true home, beyond the stars, beyond the beyonds. Analogous to our treasonous politicians of today, the demiurge and his archons could never have tricked and trapped our immortal spirits into these flesh prisons without the collusion and connivance of the traitor Siddhas, the gods from the eternal realms who threw in their lot with the demiurge. Hence the vicious, cosmic, interdimensional, intergalactic war between the good Siddhas and the evil ones, who are determined to keep us on this louche farm with their reincarnation, which should be called recycling, racket, so the demiurge and his archons can keep feeding off our misery, pain, and suffering. Contrary to their lies, which say that a soul must incarnate endless times to learn lessons, the more times a soul incarnates in the flesh, the more it weakens, as it gets increasingly estranged from its ultimate I, or eternal spirit self, until it inevitably dissolves into nothingness. The soul is not immortal. That is a demiurgic creation along with our bodies. Only our divine spark is eternal, which is uncreated. But too long a separation from its source of origin, and it is in danger of being forever lost. Food for thought there, the idea that this abomination hell realm, which I reference in every video and which we all have been forced to experience, was never the creation of the original God, according to this way of thinking. It's only a creation of this lesser being or these lesser forces. And that would explain why it's all about pain, fear, and suffering. And it doesn't matter how many times you pray to what you consider to be a good, benevolent God, nothing ever seems to improve. In fact, often you can pray for something and you get the exact opposite, which does rather leave you thinking, if you're capable of critical thought and you've moved beyond systematic mind control of religion, what's the fucking point then? On to the next piece of correspondence. Like Buddhism, Gnosticism begins with the fundamental recognition that earthly life is filled with suffering. In order to nourish themselves, all forms of life consume each other, thereby visiting pain, fear, and death upon one another. Even herbivorous animals live by destroying the life of plants. In addition, so-called natural catastrophes, earthquakes, floods, fires, drought, volcanic eruptions, bring further suffering and death in their wake. Human beings, with their complex physiology and psychology, are aware not only of these painful features of earthly existence, they also suffer from the frequent recognition that they are strangers living in a world which is flawed and absurd. Many religions advocate that humans are to be blamed for the imperfections of the world. Supporting this view, they interpret the Genesis myth as declaring that transgressions committed by the first human pair brought about a fall of creation, resulting in the present corrupt state of the world. Gnostics respond that this interpretation of the myth is false. The blame for the world's failings lies not with humans, but with the creator, since, especially in the monotheistic religions, the creator is God. This Gnostic position appears blasphemous and is often viewed with dismay, even by non-believers. Refer to the Depeche Mode song Blasphemous Rumours, which I included in a previous video. Ways of evading the recognition of the flawed creation and its flawed creator have been devised over and over, but none of these arguments have impressed Gnostics. The ancient Greeks, especially the Platonists, advised people to look to the harmony of the universe, so that by venerating its grandeur, they might forget their immediate afflictions. That's pretty much what I was getting at in the first part of this video. But since this harmony still contains the cruel flaws, forlornness, and alienation of existence, this advice is considered of little value by Gnostics. Nor is the Eastern idea of karma regarded by Gnostics as an adequate explanation of creation's imperfection and suffering. Karma, at best, can only explain how the chain of suffering and imperfection works. Let me just scroll down here. It does not inform us in the first place why such a sorrowful and malign system should exist. Okay, next message, brief one. There is an authentic half, a true deific component within creation, but it's not recognized by the half maker and by his cosmic minions, known as the archons or the rulers. Maybe that answers the question as to why there can still be awesome, majestic beauty, think the mountains of the Scottish Highlands, at the same time as all the horror and pain that we know occurs. We're witnessing both halves of this creation occurring side by side. So you could be in Glencoe, for instance, in Scotland, one of the most incredible places on earth, that pass on the A82 there. And you could be taken in the beauty and the majesty of the mountains and the glens. And at the same time, there could be an animal within those glens tearing apart another animal to eat its body. So beauty and horror occurring side by side at the same point in space and time. Next message. The saddest thing in life is surely that we still do not know why we are here and why we just have to go through all this. Back to Eric Dubé's boat analogy. We also still do not know why some folks can get away with plenty. Think Matt Hancock, for example. Dan Andrews, insert name of your choice. I never understood exactly what Eve did wrong. Did she perhaps mate with Satan? Another sad thing is even when you notice what is wrong, practically no one else even listens or pays attention. As George Carlin commented, nobody seems to care. Nobody seems to notice. So I responded to that particular message, and I'm going to read out my response here just to throw this into the mix. So many thanks for the message. I note all your points and insights. I think it has to come back to that video game analogy I mentioned. If the object of a game is to kill aliens, for example, it's an exercise in futility to attempt to do anything other than kill aliens. You're doomed to failure, since the code of the game has been written to ensure that only the killing of aliens brings rewards. So if the code of this reality has been written to ensure that only pain, suffering, fear, and trauma can really flourish, then it explains why selfish, psychopathic shits thrive and prosper, while anyone else who tries to do their best to do good and help others only reaps suffering and defeat for their efforts because they're going against the rules of the game, the code. So that's a message that I think I've driven home enough times by this point. Next message: the malicious spirits, demiurge, call it what you will, feed off any strong emotion, positive or negative, love or hate. That's why we need to maintain the center ground and be neither too positive or too negative, to try to remain calm in all situations. It's like a heroic army general in the midst of a bloody battle. He keeps his head while all around are losing theirs. The Demiurge built AI is 24/7, 365 on the lookout for any strong emotions, like the Eye of Sauron, constantly scouring the landscape. The evil entities don't just feed off of negative energy, fear, hate, despair. They feed off any emotion, including joy, happiness, and feelings of freedom and redemption. But since they're psychopaths, they don't want us feeling happy or joyful, not most of the time anyway. So when musicians like the Rolling Stones, U2, Paul McCartney tour, millions of their fans are happy and rapturous. The evil entities feed off that energy also. When it detects an emotion above a certain level, it is galvanized into motion, triangulates the position, and fucks up that area or persons. That's why when people are ecstatically happy, often something terrible happens. For example, somebody on the holiday of a lifetime, joyously happy, swimming in turquoise tropical waters, suddenly gets ripped to shreds by a great white shark. And that makes me think of raves, dance music events of old, where extreme levels of euphoria were cultivated through what went into the music, but also the drugs, ecstasy being the obvious one, really heightened states of emotion where people partaking in those raves were so joyously happy and rapturous for a few hours. What if those kinds of displays of emotion get fed off in the same way as louche, fear-based energy does? Great point. Maybe it's all expressions of extreme emotion. So the solution is to remain balanced. This one provides a good segue into the solutions monologue that I want to read out shortly. So, due to the illusionary simulation nature of this reality, all the unbelievably cruel and wicked things that happen here are only real while they're being experienced. A concept I still struggle with today, as I'm a father and loving husband. It would suggest, though, that if this is some sort of dream or illusion, it becomes a never happened scenario once we are able to escape it. Maybe another reason why a so-called good God doesn't intervene. I believe outside of this reality, there is no hierarchy of power, hence all the persuasion tactics that go on in near-death experiences and pre-birth experiences. A favorite saying that I've coined is, persuasion is the perversion of power. I believe this earth experience to be one of constant compliance and indoctrination of limited belief. So lifetime after lifetime of complying and complying, we naturally comply at the time of death. Knowing your true power, in my opinion, is how we escape all of this mess. And of course, this viewpoint posits that reincarnation is a very real thing. Is it? I don't know. I've lent for many years towards the idea that it is. But what if that's a psyop? What if that's a cleverly constructed myth to once again mislead us and strip us of our true power? Who knows? We have to admit that we just don't know. It takes courage to admit that you don't know something. Not many YouTubers and broadcasters want to do that. They want to be that guy or that woman with all the answers that people come to, like they're some kind of guru. But the truth is, they don't know any better than I do, or you do, or anyone else watching this. So at this point, as I wrap things up, I want to include this article that I referenced, which was written in 2023, October 14th, 23, and is credited to a writer by the name of Suzaku. So I don't know if that's a male or a female, but I came across this article and I thought it worthy of including here. So I'm going to read out an abridged version of it. You can get the full article as a PDF download from the MediaFire link that I'll put in the show notes below. So if this stuff intrigues you, grab a download of the PDF and you can read the whole thing in your own time. So the shortened version goes like this. I wrote this paper because I want to share the information contained in this writing with you before I die. I can leave this world with full satisfaction, knowing that I imparted this knowledge to you, gained through years of truth seeking. The grid is a metaphysical barrier that prevents humans from exiting our physical reality, also called the konoma, matrix, or the construct. Once outside our reality, you are free forever, able to maintain your unique consciousness, to escape reincarnation, and you will be immortal. My intention is to exit this reality through a hole in the grid as soon as possible, immediately after realizing that I'm dead. After death, you will be in a different plane of existence than you were in life. That plane is called the astral. Within the astral, immediately after death, any disease, infirmity, or disability that you had prior to your death will be gone. For example, if you in this life were totally blind, you'll be able to see things clearly in the astral after your death. Do not worry that any infirmity, disease, or disability will prevent or reduce your opportunity to exit this reality. The grid is a vibratory energy grid preventing exit out of this physical reality. At death, look above you and use your deceased body as a reference to search for a hole in the vibratory energy grid. That hole is where you want to exit, and you do it by using thought, intention, and focus. Passing through this hole will lead to a universe that is outside of the 4% visible universe that we can see with our eyes, the spectrum of visible light. When you're outside our grid, all the memories from your past lives will return to you. The restoration of your memories is confirmation that you're outside the grid. Here's a simple 3-step exit sequence. 1. If your mind is dazed or confused, or due to the violent circumstances of your death, use the pure, focused, true intent to command clarity now to gain mental clarity. 2. Use true intent to show a hole in the grid. The wording suggested is, show me the holes in the grid now. Ignore anything other than the search for a hole in the grid. 3. Immediately after the hole in the grid has been identified and located, use the true intent focused on the located hole. If for any reason you have a problem seeing the grid, if you're uncertain whether it's the grid, you can always use the command grid clarity now. That will show the grid. Some notes about the exit sequence. Free will. You have absolute free will to choose anything, but must accept the consequences of your choice. When you arrive in the astral plane after your death, you have absolute free will and are not bound by any soul contracts or failure to declare sovereignty. I'm going to jump here to the conclusion because, as I say, if anyone wants the full article, they can grab it from that download. But in conclusion, the purpose of this writing is to provide you with a choice. If you, in your mind, create, visualize, or imagine that the holes in the grid are all true exits out of this construct while alive, after your death, all the holes in the grid that you observe will be true exits out of this construct. Whether you choose to go through a hole in the grid is your decision. You must make the decision using your own free will to do what your intuition tells you is best for you, so that you will have no regrets. Do not make your decision to please or gain acceptance from anyone. I strongly encourage you to focus on exiting this reality as soon as possible once you realize you are dead. Ignore everything except what is essential to exit. I wish you the greatest future happiness. So, as with all things, people can make of that what they will, but I considered it interesting and intriguing enough to include as we continue to seek answers to these questions. Announcements and housekeeping items. I've got many upcoming events in the weeks and months ahead. Looking forward to dropping a few DJ sets at some festivals this summer, if we actually get one. We're very close to the summer solstice, and here in England, we've had no warm weather to speak of whatsoever this year. Not really. That is not natural. I've been hearing about these crazy rainstorms which fell on the Balearics and certain parts of Spain in the past few days, causing absolute havoc. That is not natural either. Neither were the rainstorms which fell on Dubai the other week, a year's worth of rain in one day. It's all evidence that we're being messed with. It's all in line with the global climate warming change bollocks agenda, which is trying to be pushed. And once again, it's a reminder of just how we need to rise up and take action against the sick, demonic psychopaths who are running this realm. We could take it further and say they're doing the bidding of whatever entity created it or currently runs it. But either way, it's not enough just to sit back and allow these things to happen. Real world action and resistance is required. Bit of an aside there. I tend to go down these by-the-by routes. So many events coming up in the weeks ahead, and the best way to keep on top of those is to visit my main website, djmarkdevlin.com/events. Hope to see people out and about at many of those. At the Shine seminars in August, the first weekend in August, on the Friday, the 2nd, as well as delivering a presentation, I'll be doing my first workshop. I've seen workshops being conducted at many conference events, never actually done one myself. This one is going to be titled Decoding Illuminati Symbolism in Popular Culture. So if that intrigues anyone who's going to be in attendance at the Shine seminars, you can drop me an email to the address in the notes below, markdevlin2022@protonmail.com, and register your interest in being a part of that seminar. You can pay on the day in cash, which is always, of course, preferred. So many other events coming up, many podcasts and interviews on the way. I did one with Sophie Ottaway just this week, which was filmed. Watch out for that one. That's going to get released probably next week. I did Good Vibrations with Dr. Mike Yeadon, as I previously mentioned. That one has been up on my platforms for a few days now. I've got one coming very soon with Rhys Dorney, the proprietor of the Schism website. He's been on before, and we're talking about the complete moral debasement and degradation of popular culture, focusing on the music industry and specifically what laughingly masquerades as hip-hop, rap and urban music, R&B and such, which is, of course, nothing of the sort. It's straight satanic garbage, and it's being used to mind control young people. So we get into the mechanics and the fine detail of that in that podcast. I think I've called it normalizing Satanism, which is what it is. And as I say, plenty of other interviews and such in the coming weeks. I post all my videos on YouTube. I'm on my 4th channel there. Somehow it's surviving. Don't quite know how. Skating on thin ice probably, but there it is. And everything I put out is also on my BitChute, my Odyssey, and my Rumble. And the audio goes on Spreaker. I've also got a Patreon channel, and that's where anyone who has found value in my work and would like to contribute towards seeing it continue, and also get access to exclusive content which is not posted elsewhere, can support me in that way. So by becoming a Patreon, you get 3 exclusive videos every month that I don't post anywhere else. So I'll put the links to that in the notes below as well. And maybe people just want to take a look at that page and see the sort of content that's available. And if you feel to get involved as a member and support me through Patreon, of course, that would be greatly appreciated. You can make a donation if you want to make a straight donation to me and the continuation of my work via buymeacoffee.com, or just a straight donation via PayPal or a bank transfer if that works for you. So again, details of all of this will be in the notes below. There's some products that I'm involved with that I'm happy to help promote. I've just got involved in privacy phones and laptops coming from Incognito Privacy Tech. So this is a company run by Jamie Turek, and he specializes in phones and other devices that prevent you from being tracked, monitored, and surveilled in the way that we routinely are through devices that we use if we don't have this kind of protection in place. So his company is all about protecting you from spying by, big tech. So I'm an affiliate with these products, and there's a link below where if you feel to order any of these, you can do it through this link, and I get a small cut there, which again just helps me to continue what I do. Same thing with these natural health products that I'm involved with. There's Root, there's also NANO SOMA, and there's Master Peace. Again, links to these in the notes below. And if you feel to purchase any of these products that are all about boosting your immune system and keeping you protected from things like chemtrails and all these other assaults on our bodies that we get from all directions, then again, you can click on my affiliate links there. At this point then, I'm going to round off this video with the Wayne Bush interview. We're going back 10 years. I would really like to have a new discussion with Wayne because he did tell me at the time that I was the first podcast host to put out these ideas and to give him a platform to express how he felt about these things. As I say, this was from 2014, so I feel it would be very relevant at this point, now that I'm exploring these subjects so intricately, to have a new chat with him. I have tried reaching out to him a few times. I've not got a response. I don't know if that means he's seen the messages and just doesn't feel to do a show, or if he's not come across the messages. If anyone's got any way of reaching Wayne Bush, besides his Facebook page, that's where I've tried reaching out to him, but he's not responded to the messages, then please do drop me an email to the address below. And Wayne, if you happen to be watching and you feel like doing a new show, do get in touch. But in the meantime, this is what he had to say all those years ago. There's not much to see with this one. It's not a visual podcast, so it's audio only. But these are ideas that I feel are worth rebroadcasting at this point. Again, I don't necessarily subscribe to them. I don't necessarily nail my colors to this particular mast, but also I don't necessarily chuck them out or reject them either. So let's play out with this. Bit of a long one this time, but I will see you for God 8.0, whatever that may consist of. Take care in the meantime. Cheers.
You're here because you know something, that there's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there.
Don't worry, don't be afraid, ever. This is just a ride.
Vibrations, I'm picking up vibrations, I'm picking up vibrations, I'm picking up vibrations.
Wrapped up like a douche, another runner in the night. Blinded by the light. Wrapped up like a douche, another runner in the night. Blinded by the light. Wrapped up like a douche.
So welcome back to Good Vibrations. We're going to have a deep one today, getting into some deep subject matter, and these are always good to do. I'm chatting to Wayne Bush over in Texas, US. Hey, Wayne.
Hey, Mark. Thanks for inviting me on the show.
Great to have you on. No relation to George H.W., I'm sure?
Absolutely not.
Good to hear. So you run the website trickedbythelight.com, which people will no doubt want to go to as a reference point for what they're going to hear about today. And we're here to talk about some of the content that you've got on that site. Before we get into the specifics of it, though, would you just like to set the scene a little bit and what inspired you to start this site and what inspired you to start writing about the sort of esoteric subjects that you cover?
Okay, sure. I'm originally from Ohio and United States, of course. I moved to Austin and went to University of Texas, and I've been a computer programmer at the state of Texas for about 25 years now. I was raised as a casual Catholic, and then I became a Christian while I was at the University of Texas. And after about 10 years, I started looking into the New Age movement and became more conspiracy-minded when I discovered Art Bell, David Icke, Jordan Maxwell, John Lear, and others. And after I had read and watched everything I could get my hands on, I started doing my own original research into the symbology and the language and music, movies. I analyzed the data, and then I put up my Trick by the Light website originally in 2002. The website's basically a response to the popular notion that there's a tunnel that one goes through when one dies to be with a loving light. It's a familiar mem noun, is being used for a source of jokes in movies. I believe it's a trick in that our souls are lured to the light by alien beings on the moon and used as a source of energy for the sun. So we get mooned and we are SOL, shit out of luck. The soul has died or been bleached and is released and sent to Earth, where it is recycled and reincarnated, or reincarcerated as I like to call it, where they feed off the negative emotions generated from our stressful lives as slaves. We're imprisoned by our body cells and our chemical compounds. We're kept here not only by gravity, but we're also spellbound by the spelling of words which pronounce a life sentence with prison terms. We're being tricked, for it's a game, the game of life for the human race. We're mostly a composite of our thoughts, emotions, feelings, and our physical composition. So we can be influenced or controlled by these. Our thoughts are largely based on what we were taught growing up or our conditioning, what we see and hear. That is words that comprise our language and images or symbols that we see around us and we're constantly inundated with. I think art imitates life, and life in turn reflects the bigger true picture and may give us insight into why we are truly here and where we came from. The media influences our conscious and subconscious minds, so that would include music, television, movies. Also, religion and politics can use our emotions against us and flag waving and justifying the cause for holy wars and such. So the devil's in the details, as they say. So I'm going to try to look at each of these areas. And the words are like breadcrumbs that can provide a trail that we can use as clues to trace or track down our history. So when I first started researching, I delved into the language. So I looked up God in the dictionary, and I noticed that I try to break things down. So I saw the G at the front, and I thought of the Freemason symbol, and then I saw Ode, O-D, at the end, and I'd heard of that, the Odilic or Odic force, and how the Norse god Odin or Woden was the head of their pantheon, and that's where we get the word for Wednesday or Woden's Day. So the dictionary said Ode was a mysterious force of the universe or God. My Encyclopedia of Witchcraft says Ode and Obe are astral energy, and on this plane, spiral is two snakes of energy that spiral up our spine, like on the caduceus symbol. So the G is the Freemasonic symbol, which I believe is the sun, Sol, which is a G-class star, and the musical note G in the Do, Re, Mi, Fa, Sol, La, Ti system. So, to the Egyptians, the sun was Re or Ra, so it's raw matter, raw material, and we get a raw deal. It's the ether ore. The wind through the solar wind, the soul, S-O-L, becomes soul, S-O-U-L, and the sun, S-U-N, becomes a sun, S-O-N. Or our self becomes imprisoned by body cells and chemical compounds. The plasma from the sun becomes plasma in the blood or cytoplasm in the cells. The G, gamma, which is another reason for the G, gamma rays from the sun, becomes a gamete, or your ego or ego. And the or from Ra becomes your or Ra. So life on Earth comes from the energy of the sun, energy. Solar flares cause the solar wind, which blows electromagnetic wave particles such as photons and gamma rays. So the sun blow odd, and it becomes our blood. And the light, photons, and energy from the sun is responsible for the growth of our odd or food. So I know one of the things you mentioned you wanted to cover was the area of cymatics, and that's probably a good place to start.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, there's a lot of information there that people can go away and muse on. But we did do a volume of Good Vibrations a while back, earlier this year, with a lady called Laurel Erica. And it was on the whole subject of word magic and the idea that the English language has been deliberately manipulated to get vast numbers of humans throughout the world uttering particular sounds as part of their everyday communication. And it's no accident that the British Empire saw to it that English was the language that was exported all around the world and was spoken by such vast numbers of people every day without really thinking about the effect that uttering these sounds might be having on reality. And she was, she was making the point that words are spells, they cast spells. It's a form of sound magic. And you've got various sort of incantations and mantras that people speak every day without really thinking about it.
And what's a mantra? It's a mantra. So, Hans Jenny studied how frequency and oscillation affects the very structure of matter. And cymatics comes from the Greek kuma, meaning wave. So all this energy travels in waves, and he studied how the vibrational energy of sound waves, such as the human voice or music, create an interference that forms geometric patterns on vibrating membrane like a steel plate with media such as sand. He found increasing the frequency made more complex forms like the mandalas and stuff that we were mentioning, and snowflakes like sacred geometry patterns. So like listeners may be familiar with blowing a smoke ring by making the lips into a shape of an O. It's the same idea. And crystals in water are alive and can store memory and be affected by positive or negative thoughts. And most of our body is water, and we have plasma in the blood. So you can look at ritual, and everything done during ritual is a symbol of an energy that exists on the astral plane. To bring the energy through, the magician sets up a circuit of communication so that the power can flow. To further aid in the direction and control of power, the magician relies upon certain magical tools to help his unconscious mind. The dagger, sword, wand, cup or chalice, incense and burner, lamps and candles. And you can see entertainers pointing at you or flicking their hands. But two types of ritual magic are evocation and invocation. And evocation is used in ceremonial magic and the commanding of certain forces and entities by names of powers and sigils. I don't know how you say it. These are done in a mixture of Greek, Hebrew, and unknown languages. And invocation invites higher spirits and the gods. So you can recognize letters in the English alphabet have origins in the Germanic runes, which were used to cast spells. The sound or phonetic value of the rune is its vibratory quality in the air, in space. And each rune has a certain sound to it to be chanted or sung. And it's the magical creative quality that is inherent in speech. So that's how you ruin a language, is with rune magic. And the runes can be used to affect the world outside based on the archetypes they represent. Then you have like the magic books in Europe that were known as the grimoires, which came from the French word for grammar. And you've got Goetia spell books and the Book of the Dead called the Necromonicon. And these, they have little sigils, that's supposed to represent the different gods or demons, and they can be called down through the use of angles. So.
And isn't it interesting on the subject of double meanings and wordplay and such that at the end of Christian prayers, you're always taught to say the word Amen, which is actually invoking Amun-Ra, an Egyptian sun deity. And you've got Christians,
goat-headed, ram-headed.
Christians all around the world finishing every prayer with Amen and not really thinking about why it's there.
I'm going to mention that later with even the Lord's Prayer, and that's how they end it with Amen. But so we can get into the language or the spelling, and so the control of the mind's largely achieved through our communication of thoughts and language. We're imprisoned by our body cells and chemical compounds, and we languish in our language. Languid means weak and lacking spirit or void of animation or lifeless. And we spell words and pronounce a sentence, a life sentence with a period or term like a jail term or a prison sentence in a pen. And the first thing you learn when you go to school is how to spell. The word sisters in Greek mythology were fates or witches who controlled the fates of man. And in our language, we use curse words and cursive writing. A rite is in a ritual or magical rite. We cuss and discuss. The words have meaning and are mean things, especially cross words. They can be used to make a point, and we use a converse to converse in order to keep us off course in our discourse because a phrase. We use catchwords. A story is a spiel or a spell. So words are spelled to create a sentence of terms. And books contain chapters which are secret societies or religious orders, like the Knights Templar. A chapter contains many pages. A page is an understudy and in service to the king and queen, as in pages and squires, a knight who's well versed in magic and more or less a soldier or trained assassin. To page someone is to summons them. Pages are bound together and summon demons. After all, a page does contain many sentences. A jail sentence is served in a prison ward, and indeed a sentence is created by words that are spelled out using letters. A letter is someone who allows something to happen or does something for someone else, like a blood letter. The word book as a verb means to arrest or detain, bookum dano. In fact, the Latin word for book is libere, which is where we get our word library and also the word liberty. You can book or place a bet on a game or race with your bookie, and there is a bet being placed on a race, and it's the human race, and the game is the game of life. It's the main bet or alphabet. An example of spell casting through language is when someone sneezes, you say bless you, which can also be heard by the subconscious mind as be less you. Wouldn't it be better to say be more you? We greet each other with hello, which is hell, and the suffix o, which looks like a hole or a planet, and is used to associate something to someone else, like the word daddy-o. Another is in the Prisoner TV show. They would say be seeing you, as they held up their hand and directed it towards you in a salute. And the C looks like a crescent moon. Paul McCartney even had a song called Sea Moon. We have homophones where two words have the same sound but different meanings, and that allows for lots of room for deception. Mixed messages speaking to the subconscious mind, which scrambles to make sense of a sentence using context with double meanings and double speak. Think about the words know, K-N-O-W, and know, N-O. Knowledge is considered a very positive word, yet it's linked phonetically with the most negative word in our language. So when you say, I know this to be true, are you partially negating its reality? Also, you have profit and pray and pray. Another way is that the subconscious mind can make sense of anagrams. I have a statement on the website where the letters of the words have been rearranged, yet you can still easily read it without problem. And it says, according to research at Cambridge University, it doesn't matter in what order the letters in a word are. The only important thing is that the first and last letter be at the right place. The rest can be a total mess, and you can still read it without a problem. This is because the human mind does not read every letter by itself, but the word as a whole. This means your subconscious mind should also relate multiple meanings to words when they are anagrams. So it shouldn't be any problem to associate the word live with evil, for example. And, how many names for government entities start with a negative prefix? The word nation is nay and shun. The UN, United Nations, NATO, Nazi Party, NASA, NORAD, UNESCO, NASCAR, NATAS. I'm sure you can come up with others. Prefixes and suffixes completely change the meaning of words. There's many negative prefixes such as dis and un and con, also ones that mean the sun or moon like re or mon. And you have suffixes such as s, which looks like a snake and makes something plural. The suffix al, can make something an adjective to describe a thing. And you have other suffixes like tick and or and ion and shun. Ing suffix, which is a rune called ing or ing, takes a verb and makes an action into an object or thing. A noun just by adding ing or ng. You have all these con words. Khans or Khonsu was an Egyptian moon god. It's all a con. It's in the language, the lexicon. It's all a con game by controlling, conniving, conceited con men, convicts in a connected, conspicuous conspiracy without consulting us, but with our conscious consent and constant consequences. I've got a bunch of other con words, but you get the idea.
Yeah, get the idea.
Yeah, and you might say, a student might say, I took econ at UConn. My professor looked like Acon. He's my icon. And so, yeah, they are cons. They're basically admitting it. They say icon, right? And then they put their hands around their eye with that symbol, and it's an icon. So most of our communication is subconscious and is achieved through the use of symbols or a symbol. Logos and ads, they affect our subconscious, and you see the sun and moon, eclipses and stars are all over the place in these logos, and then the star is a pinnacle in witchcraft. In our identity, you have an id entity or the it entity, Stephen King's it, clown or monster, and we have phrases like make it so mote it be, the Beatles chant let it be over and over, the movie It's Alive, and children play the game tag your it. And then you have other products like sun-kissed, star-kissed, gold-kissed. A kissed is a casket. And you have G-Star, Ra, G-Shock, and you have a couple interesting logos or ads associated with the moon, especially the DreamWorks Pictures logo, where a boy's sitting on the moon with a fishing pole and lure cast into the waters below, presumably the Earth. Then you have the Miller High Life siren symbolism, where it has these oar paddles in an X shape with a witch with a pointed hat sitting on a crescent moon with stars behind her, and she's holding up a golden glass of beer, like Columbia on the logo, and the sign reads "Fishing, Reel in the High Life." Continuing on with the moon, you have the Death Star from Star Wars that was disguised as a moon. In the movie The Ring, where it says before you die you see the ring, and the image is a picture of a solar eclipse. So if you look at the moon, it's during a total eclipse, it's an uncanny coincidence that the moon's diameter is about 400 times smaller than the sun's, yet is 400 times closer to the Earth, so that just perfectly blocks out the sun during a solar eclipse.
Just a coincidence, nothing to worry about.
Yeah, exactly. Nothing to see here.
Yeah.
Then you have the backside of the moon. It's another coincidence that the moon just happens to rotate just slow enough that the same side always faces Earth. So I wanted to look at those prefixes, mon, which is moon or man, because you say, hey, mon. And the monad is a god or deity for which many cultures was the moon. Mono equals one, so you have monopoly, and Monday was the moon's day. Month is the time it takes the moon to renew. You have money, which is associated with the moon, and monetary.
Monarch.
Monarchy, yes, exactly.
There's a bit of archon in there as well somewhere.
Yeah, there is. And then you have a monster, which is a moon star. The stir comes from the Greek aster, which means a star, and that's why an asterisk it looks like a star. So you have monumental and ceremony and sermon, and you pay alimony, alimony, and a demon is from the moon. Then you have the suffix al or al. And is a moon god. You have el, al, and il are definite articles in different language and mean the. So like in English, the is, you have theology, which is the study of God. So the is God, is where you get theo. And, usually connected to the name of God. So El or Ella is the Hebrew god. Allah literally means the God or God Al. Allah is the moon god of Islam. So you have alchemy on an altar to alter the astral field with magical spell. Alma is soul in Spanish, and you have an alkaline battery which stores energy, and you have a luring and capital, and you pay alms. So you have this et al, like when you say and others, you say et al, et al, etc. And it's the et al or alen. You have other words like metal and mental and cerebral and spinal, and I could go through a bunch of them, but I won't bore you with it.
There's so much there that people just don't think about. We use this language every day, and we don't think about the origins of it. And you've just reeled off so many examples there, and I'm sure there are many more that people can find from your site and many others. But I did just want to pick up on the Prisoner TV show, which you mentioned back there, because I remember hearing Michael Tsarian doing an analysis of the symbology behind The Prisoner a while back.
Really? Okay.
And he was giving a view as to what the plotline of The Prisoner might really be all about, because it's a very enigmatic and iconic show. And he was of the view that The Prisoner is an allegory for us here in this apparent physical reality. and this life that we find ourselves born into. And he was saying that, you know, you have this guy, the Patrick McGowan character, who is at the start, at the opening credits, he's some sort of government agent, and he's resigning from his job. And the powers that be are trying to find out why he resigned.
Information.
Yes, exactly. He highlights the fact that when you hear the word information, it's split. And what you're actually hearing is information.
Forming inside of you. They want to inform inside of you.
Yeah, well, his idea is you see the character passing out after he's gassed, and then he wakes up in the village, this strange alien sort of territory that he doesn't know about, and he has to try to figure out why he's there. And the idea is that it's an allegory for us as spirit souls when we make the choice in a higher state of consciousness to come into this reality and learn these life lessons and go through these experiences. And we're trying to understand why we came here. And I think that's a very interesting analysis. And
it is. I see it a little more nefarious than that, because there was this thing called the rover on the prisoner that would come down from this high tower. And of course, there was this green dome, and they had this lunar room where one side of the screen was the constellations, and the other side showed Earth. And so they were viewing the prisoner from the moon, from this green dome, and then this rover white balloon thing would come down and chase down a man if he tried to escape, and he would like suffocate him, right? So you couldn't leave. So there was a lot of stuff, and I'll get to some of that actually a little bit later when I get into the movies parts.
Yeah, sure. So, I was just going to say this very idea that life is kind of a game, and this is a place that we come to learn lessons and have experiences, and then take that back to source when it's all over, when we exit this reality, kind of leads us on to the main talking point of your site. And the phrase that jumped out at me when I first came across your site was how souls are programmed to go to the moon/sun at death to be recycled as energy, and then the subtext reads how to win the game of life and escape the prison planet Earth, which is a matrix illusion that we dream. Now that is a phrase that kind of slaps you about the face and gets the attention.
Well, it doesn't read really well, and the reason I put it up there, and it's in large, bold, like header one text, is because the search engines, they look for certain search terms, and if you want to bring people to your site, you have to use a bunch of these search terms. So that's why I put a lot of that up there. But well,
do you want to talk us through that whole concept then? Because another of our previous guests, Sonia Barrett, back last year I think it was talking about the idea that this apparent physical reality, which is not physical at all, it's holographic, is a game. Life is basically a game, and we make certain decisions before we come here in terms of the sort of experiences we're going to have. That there's an element of it whereby it's a blank canvas and we create our own reality as we go. But basically the type of life and who we're going to be is something that we predetermine before we get here. That was her suggestion. And I wonder if that ties into your theory. And can you just take us through your line of thinking on all this?
Sure. One of the best-selling games of all time, and I don't know what games you all have over in the UK, but here for sure it's the game of life. And so life's just a game, and games are fun and for our amusement. I mean, I think if there is a deeper reality, like another dimension, that it's probably a lot like this. I mean, why do we love entertainment and games so much? You know, it's probably the intuitive people tap into that, and it's, maybe we are just a game for them or a movie for them to watch. But it's a virtual reality game. And if you look at the games that we play, the video games, they're becoming more and more real like. And, pretty soon you won't be able to distinguish a game from watching a football game on a television set in front of your face. And, so, you have these reality TV shows, and it's a play or drama for the world's a stage, and we're merely players. And you have these Game Boys, you have an iPod and Wii, so it's like, we are the players playing a game from a game pod in an electromagnetic field or gridiron. And so games are a lot of times played on board games, so maybe these are just board games because in this other dimension we're bored and we need some drama to, something to do, a challenge. So you have card games with tricks, where you take tricks. And I'm going to get into the trickster god and some of that. But games are where you roll a die over and over again to symbolize dying and reincarnation. And you have a race on a track that goes round and round, or a sports game. And so you have games, some of these board games like chess are played on 64 check squares, which just happens to match our 64 codons in our DNA. So I'm going to go to the section on the trickster god, I guess, since it deals with games. And so you have have you ever heard of the trickster god, where you have like Loki was a trickster god, and Kokopelli was a trickster god with the Native American tribes that had a flute. And so he's known by different names to different cultures. You have Inky, who was known as Ea. In the sport, EA is is a company that makes sports games, and its slogan is "It's in the game." So you have Thoth and Set and Demiurge, and Lucifer is equated with Satan. You have trick or treat on Halloween from the Celtic and Druid practices, and then you have the old Celtic tradition of April Fool's Day. But one of the big ones is Pan, and in the London Games of 2012, they talked about Pan a lot. He was a Greek pagan nature god of the woods who played the pan pipes or the flute. And pan means all, and it's where we get the words panic and pandemonium and the frying pan. So like Lucifer, he was demonized and he was equated with the devil. But he's shown in many stories and movies such as Disney's Peter Pan, who was another fun-loving Sylvan who had pan pipes. You have Peter Piper, who picked a peck of pickled peppers, and a pepper is of the piper genus. You have the Pied Piper, who tricked the townspeople and led all the children into a giant rock or mountain. That's where we get the phrase "pay the piper." Pink Floyd has the Piper at the Gates of Dawn song. Stairway to Heaven by Led Zeppelin starts out with the flute and says, the piper's calling you to join him. The tune will come to you at last, where all are one and one is all, to be a rock and not to roll. The Beatles, Sgt. Pepper Lonely Hearts Club Band. Well, Sgt. Pepper taught the band to play, and they say, "You're such a lovely audience, we'd like to take you home with us." And then you have Dr. Pepper, the drink, where it says, their jingle was, "I'm a pepper, you're a pepper, wouldn't you like to be a pepper too?" You have the Pepsi drink, where the slogan was, "Join the Pepsi generation." So you look at the lyrics by Van Morrison of a song called "Pay the Piper," and it's pretty obvious the piper is the devil. You have the trickster Willy Wonka, who was the wizard or magician, and he had a flute, and he had a chocolate factory, and all the kids or bad eggs would disappear or die through the pipes in his factory. And so you have this concept of a green man, someone who's green is naive, and green's the color of ectoplasm. You have the man in the moon, and the moon is made of green cheese. Chi is our energy source, right? And monstrous blood's usually green, from feeding on the souls of men. So when you have this green energy near the poles, it can be seen as lights. And when it's sent to the sun, I say during an eclipse, where the energy gets clipped, it's the Green Mile from the movie, which was the hallway in which the prisoner walked between the prison cell, the holding tank, and the electric chair. So, you have a trick star associated with Lucifer, the devil, and he's the piper, which lures pips through his pipe, which is the tunnel. In games, these card games and dominoes and whatnot, the pip is it's the dot on your playing card or on your domino. And it's, you look up pip in the dictionary and it has all these different definitions. One's a seed or energy. And so it represents man. So he must reach the other side of the board. He must pip his way through the shell to be born, like a chick pips is to like peck. That's why Peter Piper pecked, peck, he's picking or pecking. And so the sperm gamete breaks through the ovum gamete egg. And so when in backgammon, it can be referred to as a game piece. In a dictionary, a pip is a short, high-pitched sound, like a short, high-pitched sound made by a bird. And so you have this reference to peep being people, like, hey, all these peeps, all my peeps. And so the pip is a pipe also. And so a piper pipes the pips or lures the fool with his pipe. And so you have this tunnel, of light that people claim during the near-death experiences. And so I think there's a connection there, because a pipe's a cylindrical tube or tunnel. And it's associated with music because a flute's a cylindrical hollow pipe.
Well, you do hear this time and time again from people that have had near-death experiences and, other worldly experiences that are able to come back into their bodies and report what they've experienced. And as you say, time and time again, it's going down this tunnel towards this amazingly, blindingly bright light. Yeah. And it's always taken to be a very positive experience and a very inspiring suggestion as to what happens to us after death. But your view is that it might not be all that benevolent and all that positive after all.
Well, when I first discovered it, I was fascinated by it. I mean, I had all the books, Betty Eady and then Life After Life and all those. And in the beginning, I thought that was the answer, But my views changed. 1990, this is almost a full decade before the release of the Matrix movie. A CIA operative under the pseudonym Val Valerian in a book named Matrix 2 said, quote, "Fourth density grays, the ones who are primarily dealing with Whitley Strieber, are the ones who possess the technical equipment to draw energy from the human bioplasmic field. They also have the ability to extract memories and experiences from the human being. It is they who await in the light when a human being dies. The human being's then recycled into another body, and the process begins all over again. Fourth density grays are, in effect, sensation junkies. To experience human emotions is the closest they themselves ever come to the idea of feeling." He later writes, "These entities have been abducting humans for many centuries. These entities view Earth as a big farm, and they have been essentially raising and harvesting humans." In Matrix 5, he writes, "They want to recycle low to lower mid-level spirits into another breeding productive incarnation, hence the light and tunnel at death trap. Scanning someone they wish to recycle as they near death, the aliens discover who the person was close to has died. They project the person's image in the white light tunnel, and the image waves you in deeper. If you choose to follow, you can be trapped and sent to another incarnation of their choice." This shows the Empire does have an understanding of the spirit, but it attempts to short this out. The light and tunnel trap is a relatively new device, but one that will fail, and they now know this. "Go into the light," say those who have had near-death experiences. They are the salespersons chosen to advertise this alien venture. Never enter that light. Go up, left, back, right, or anywhere but there. The mass media exposure of the light and tunnel trap seen in the film Ghost, where the hero willingly enters the glittering trap, is to try to never get people to buy the destination, or is to get people to try to buy the destination. End quote. So, similar to Ghost was the movie Poltergeist. It's like, mommy's waiting for you in the light. Don't even look at the light. Tell her to stay away from the light. And I'm going to touch on that later with, there's a Star Trek episode called Coda where this alien being tries to lure, the captain into this matrix of light, But, in the Tibetan, I want to talk about the light a little bit. It says, in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, it's an instruction manual on how to navigate planes of the afterlife. It reads, quote, "Be not fond of the dull smoke-colored light from hell. Remember the clear light, the pure, clear white light from which everything in the universe comes, to which everything in the universe returns, the original nature of your mind, the natural state of the universe unmanifest. Let go into the clear light, trust it, merge with it. It is your own true nature. It is home." So I'm going to look at some of these books about the near-death experience. So the first one that I'm aware of is Dr. Raymond Moody in 1975 wrote the book Life After Life about the near-death experience. And then it started a wave of others. Betty Eady wrote Embraced by the Light. She went on Art Bell's Coast to Coast radio show, and she said, quote, "I was drawn in by this energy into what then appeared to be like a tunnel, and I was drawn into this dark space. It was totally black. It was so filled with love, so nurturing, and so beautiful that I actually felt that I would prefer this place to any other place I had ever experienced. And then I saw a pinpoint of light that pierced this blackness, and then I wanted to go to that light. It was my heart's desire to go to that light. And at that point, I swirled and began to travel towards that light, going feet first. This is when I noticed that I had a spiritual body, because I could see then that I had feet and they were out in front of me, but they were of a different kind." Again, she comments about the darkness, quote, "Now, normally that would have really panicked me. It was the love that held me there and the love that comforted me. It was the most beautiful place I'd ever been. It was the most wonderful that I ever been. I cannot overemphasize the beauty of that darkness." no pain. It was just beautiful. It was though my body and my spiritual self was going through a healing, a transformation, because everything of the earth dissolved away from me, and I was filled with this tremendous love, like being held. If you feel the comfort of your father's arms or whatever was your security, you could just imagine that and that comfort you feel, and then just intensify that by 1,000 times. I mean, it was so beautiful. But the beauty was yet to be experienced, and that was the beauty of following the light. After that light pierced the darkness, which began as a pinpoint of light, just a speck of light, enough to attract my attention. And I knew, Art, that anyone in this dark space with me, any one of us that we saw the light and we so desired, we could all turn and go towards that light. But I also knew there could be spiritual beings who would not be prepared to go there. They would not release what they had here in this comfort and in this beauty, that they would not follow the light. So she goes on and on telling us how awesome and beautiful the darkness is, but for some reason that we should go to the light.
There's also a recent book by a guy called Eben Alexander, a neurologist that had a near-death experience. Have you read that one?
No.
Yeah, that was just a few years ago, I think 4 or 5 years ago. He was a neurologist, and he was absolutely of the conventional scientific view that this world is all there is, and there's no such thing as a spiritual realm, and no such thing as life after death. And he contracted an E. coli virus and infection, and it put him into a coma. And he was, to all intents and purposes, basically dead. He was just hanging on by a thread to his physical life. And in this book, he describes his experiences when he left his body and went into the spiritual realm. And I think there's an account there of going towards a brilliant white light. And then he talks about going into these different states of being and these different levels of spiritual experience, and it's a fascinating read, but it does tally with what so many other authors write about.
Daniel Brinkley seemed like had an experience very, very similar to that, and in his Saved by the Light on page 19, he admits he was an assassin with the CIA, military intelligence, and so I'm thinking, what if writing books and going on tour promoting the light or the near-death experience was just his next CIA assignment? So, and you get it one step closer, or further, you get into reincarnation. And there's this researcher, Michael Newton, who's a hypnotherapist, and he takes clients in between their lives through hypnosis, so he claims. And in his book, Journey of Souls, these different clients, one of them said, he said, some newly dead people see it opening up next to them right over their bodies, while others say they move high above the earth before they enter the tunnel. A subject under hypnosis described it, quote, at first it was very bright, close to the earth. Now it's a little darker because I've gone into a tunnel. It's a hollow, dim vent, and there's a small circle of light at the other end. I feel a tugging, a gentle pulling. I think I'm supposed to drift through the tunnel, and I do. It's more gray than dark now because of the bright circle expanding in front of me. It's as if I'm being summoned forward. I leave the circle and I'm out of the tunnel. Another subject said, I think something's pulling me to my proper level of travel and trying to relax me. I'm hearing sounds and echo of music tingling. The waves of musical notes are so beautiful here. Another one saw his dead Uncle Charlie with his hand stretched out to me to comfort me, to lead me further into the light. He is taking me to the place I should go. No, don't go. Uncle Charlie's leaving me. Why is he going away? He stays in a different place than I do. He just came to meet me, to bring me here. Another person said they are sending images into my mind, thoughts about themselves, and the shapes are changing into people. It's Larry. I'm being pulled along by a magnet, and I just enjoy the ride. I am riding on a wave, a beam of light. I must go with the wave bands of light. They do it all for you, the ones in control. I don't really know. I'm being pulled, and I'm supposed to go with it. Another subject mentioned the staging area reminded him of a hub of a great wagon wheel. Another related, I'm moving along in a chain of some kind. It's as if I'm weaving through a series of connecting links, a foggy maze, and then it opens up. After a while, I see nests of people like hives. I see them as bunches of moving lights, fireflies. Another soul talked about cones. Well, the cones do assist us. It's shaped to go around us, It's cylindrical, very bright. It's above and all around us. The cone is wide at the top and small at the bottom, so it fits all over all of us. And Dr. Newton says, I wonder if this cone is brainwashing your original thoughts. And he goes, we aren't brainwashed. Another client reported some of us have to be given a push when they think we're ready again after some more indoctrination. Dr. Newton says, indoctrination, this makes me think of coercion. He's like, it's not that way at all. In his second book, Destiny of Souls, Dr. Newton reports on a subject who describes souls being in pods, and another subject claimed to be sort of a nurse in the spirit world who describes souls in honeycomb cells being incubated in an incubator before being born. So there you go. You have this notion of pods, like in the Matrix movie. There's so many movies that
The Alien
television
movies.
shows that were Avatar's one of them, the Stargate television series. It just goes on and on with how many pods, and all these products on the market that deal with pods. Go ahead.
Sorry. Any suggestions as to who or what the malevolent force that's controlling things might be then, and what their ultimate intention might be? Are we talking what many researchers would term archons or Anunnaki? Do you think they're all the same
They have many
expressions
names,
for the
yeah.
same force?
And the archons is one that's interesting to me because it comes from the Gnostic texts, the ones that were not included in the Bible. And the researcher John Lash has talked a lot about it and probably popularized the term. And he's adamant that they are not our rulers. They're mind parasites. And they were featured in the pilot for the original Star Trek series called The Cage. And they later had an episode named Return of the Archons. And they looked like the little gray aliens. They were short and had bulbous heads. They had these silver little costumes on, but they created illusions for the human mind. And I'll get into it later in the movie section. But the Archons...
Sorry, do you think that's who we might be dealing with here then?
Yeah. The Archons, and they are acontic or parasitic ticks. That's where we get the tick suffix and the words like plasmatic and magnetic and genetic. Yeah, politics, lunatic, plastic, cybernetic, neurotic, patriotic, narcotic, idiotic, politics, cybernetic, linguistic. There's just a bunch of them. And so I think the aliens are ticks. They feed off our energy. We're food of the gods, as so to say. Yeah. So like we have these human beings that were placed on this plant in the Garden of Eden. And people is a pun for a pea pole. Peas are beans, and they do grow on a pea pole in pods. It's very interesting that so many of these programs do depict the humans living in pods and living a simulated life. And of course, there are all these game pods and iPods and podcasts. And as kids were said to be raised, much like crops are, and semen's often referred to as seed. And if someone is our ancestor, they are said to be from our seed. So why are we called a human? It's because we have different races or hues. According to the Dictionary of Ancient Deities, Hu, H-U, was an Egyptian stellar, quote, god of sense of taste and also the divine food on which gods and mortals feed. And he appears at the creation in the boat of the sun. Later, he appears at the judgment of the dead. So, I wonder what was on his menu. I mean, every time a new fetus is created, do they say, feed us? I mean, it's all dream theater. It's the theater for the eater. So we were placed on this planet Earth in a secret garden by a constant gardener. And then the farmer rides on his reaper to sow the crops. We're all familiar with the grim reaper who's said to come to harvest your soul at death. So yeah, I do think they are the archons and whatever name you want to give to them, that they are somehow feeding off our energy like a source. And then I do believe the soul's getting lured to the moon and then eventually to the sun to be recycled.
I mean, hearing this is going to be a horrific thing for many people to take on board.
Yeah. But that's why you have to remember it's just a game. It's all games.
Well, yeah. It's all a game, and we're the co-creators of the reality that we experience, as so many researchers have pointed out. And this is also the basis of.
We're directing the movie. We're starring in the movie. We're co-authors.
This is the basis of so many ancient religions, and this is what gurus and sages and shaman have understood throughout the ages. But what would you say is the solution then? If we understand that this is what might be happening to our souls after death, having figured this out, what are our options for doing anything about it?
Well, first of all, we have to educate other people, and I mean, you have to expose the problem first. And yeah, it's ugly to look at or whatnot, but it is just a game. And so I think if we could, change the language, or maybe we just shoot down the moon, whatever it is, we need to get people more aware, and maybe other people can have a better solution. But I mean, first of all, the obvious one is not to go to the light, if you die. And, there's other.
Do you think you would have, you think you would have control over that
Well, that's a really good question, because we may be on our autopilot based on our subconscious. Everything has been programmed into us. So we're in some kind of, spell-like trance, or like when you're asleep, you're hardly aware. But based on what Betty Eadie and some of these other near-death experiencers are, they claim to be pretty much aware of where they are and of their thoughts and stuff. And, they emphasize that they do have a choice whether to go in, and they choose to do that. And, so I guess you wouldn't have to choose to do that, but, I think there would be a very convincing
what the alternative to going towards the light would be. Would you be in a state of limbo in sort of,
you could be running around like a ghost, I guess.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I've got some different solutions that I've outlined on the site, and one of them is to use resolve, or your willpower, or our free will. Like, games are bound by their resolution, graphic resolution. So you could use free will as a resolution or resolve to win and resolve the puzzle. Or you can go inside of ourselves. If it's an upside down, inside out world, the way out is in. Space could be infinitely small inside of us as it is in outer space. You have a solution, SOL. So the sun may be a stargate. I mean, the sun is a star. Sunspots are said to have another sunspot on the exact opposite of the sun. So, there's a lot of different solutions. You could go inside the earth. If they tell us the heaven's up and hell is down, then maybe the opposite is true. So, tunneling down inside the earth could be considered traveling through a wormhole. There's a black hole at the center of the galaxy, the galactic center of the central sun. And this could be a white hole on the other side. And this could be like the yang to this yin, which would be positive. So you become whole by going through the hole. You've got Sirius. By the very name, it must be Sirius important, because it was to the ancient Egyptians. And one of the shafts in the Great Pyramid of Giza, Egypt, is aligned with Sirius. And the pharaohs were believed to travel there after their death to be with the gods. Dissolution or dissolution. This is a sort of spiritual death where you dissolve. You refuse to engage your mind or consciousness with anything because it's all just projections of the mind, phantoms or illusions. You stop feeding the machine. I mean, if you want the game to stop, just stop playing the game. It could result in a nirvana. Like in the movie War Games, the only way to win is not to play the game. We are trapped in a prison here of duality, and emotions are harvested. So the only way to end the game is not to react to it or play the game. The archons who feed off our electronic energy, E, Einstein said E equals MC squared. E is energy. Even the dictionary says that you got email and electronic email, and so even the dictionary says that energy is E. So they feed off our E emotions, and it's a move E because our energy is moving. So emotions are just our energy, and if we seize that motion, they starve and the game dies. I mentioned the Tibetan Book of the Dead, where it says to go into the clear light, and I know other people have said there's like maybe a golden light. So like if you look at the light, there's like this white light that shows this tunnel, this trap. They say if you look around, there's like a gold light maybe. I mean, I don't know. Polaris is a company, and their slogan is the way out, or the motto, the way out. So polar is the way out. You could just go perpendicular to this galactic plane that we're on. It's like a disc, and you just haul ass out of here. Because if you go to any new dimension, it's like a perpendicular 90-degree angle to the current dimension, right? So you could just go to the darkness, because pure light is dark. It can only be seen when reflected by an object, I guess. So this experience of life here on Earth is called existence or existence. So to end the existence, we go to the ends or extremities of the Earth, like in the Truman Show, or The Prisoner, the 13th Floor, Dark City, For the World's Hollow, and I've Touched the Sky was a Star Trek episode. These characters have traveled to the boundaries of the Earth, like Shell Beach, only to find there's just a wall there. Maybe we're being domed in, like on the Truman Show. I mean, you got the kingdom of a king, and you have the Lord means dominus. Maybe they're doming us. You have the television show that they've come out with, Stephen King. What is it? Under the Dome. So, I mean, as the song says, life is but a dream. So in that case, we need to wake up from the dream. And lucid dreaming is becoming aware during the dream that you're dreaming. So, I mean, there's different, escape routes, or what you want to call them.
And the other song that's coming into my head is "Blinded by the Light" by Manfred
Oh my
Mann
gosh!
Earthband, written by Bruce
I've
Springsteen.
actually, in my music section, I have that. I was going to get to that, and I'll give you a couple other ones that are very telling, and I'm trying to get to it so I can read it. But
okay,
yeah, the Blinded by the Light, that's amazing synchronology that you had there.
Yeah, and you hear that on the radio all the time.
Yeah, it was written by Bruce Springsteen, and Manfred Mann made it a #1 song. And man, I'm really having a hard time finding it on here.
No worries.
Yeah.
Just while you're looking for that, then the implication is that if you leave aside the Archons or the Anunnaki or whatever you want to call these malevolent parasitic forces that are kind of having an effect on human existence, the fact that you have this kind of symbology encoded into music and movies means that there's a human input here as well. There are groups of humans who are in full knowledge of what's going on, and they're deliberately putting this stuff into music and movies so that it can be subliminally absorbed by the rest of us.
Yeah, and like Ozzy Osbourne said, I don't know if I'm a medium for some outside source. Whatever it is, frankly, I hope it's not what I think.
Exactly.
Satan. So you have these, the muse, the word music comes from the Greek muse, or fates who inspired men. And, the artists that create music, they're very intuitive, and a lot of them claim that they're being possessed. They're not even aware of what they're doing when they're on stage. I think Santana made that claim. There's a lot of them. But, so we chant these song lyrics or the hook over and over, and many tunes that become hits have a repetitive beat that is hypnotic, a catchy melody or hook, and lyrics with a fascinating rhyme to put us deeper in a trance. You have Katy Perry, Bob Dylan, all these stars that claim they sold their soul. And if you look at the award shows, there's a lot of cult and satanic, Super Bowl halftime performances by Lady Gaga, Madonna, and others. You have the entertainers displaying this all-seeing eye symbolism, or they hold up their hands in a shape of a triangle. And then my Wiccan encyclopedia, it calls that the triangle of manifestation. And a lot of songs mention sun and moon a lot. The Beatles have like almost 10 songs that mention the sun. The Grateful Dead has almost 30 about the moon. There's other bands like Rainbow and the Cult, and they just get so deep into all these different songs about it. And Bob Dylan said, I made a bargain with it, a long time ago, and I'm holding up my end on 60 Minutes. He said that. Clear CCR's Bad Moon Rising says, I see the bad moon rising. I see trouble on the way. Don't go around tonight. It's bound to take your life. There's a bad moon on the rise. All right. Hope you got your things together. Hope you are quite prepared to die. So I believe rock and roll means to send us to the moon, the rock. You're getting rocked. And they roll us or turn us over and over again when we return. To get rolled is to be robbed, beaten, or mugged. So, Queen has this anthem, We Will Rock You. A chance, somebody better put you back into your place. Sing it. We will rock you. They sing it over and over again. AC/DC says, heads will roll and rock tonight. For those about to rock, we salute you. I mean, they're saluting somebody who's dying. I mean, they got a 21 gun salute in the song where they fire a cannon, and it says, we're just a battery for hire with a guitar fire ready and aimed at you. Pick up your balls and load up your cannon for a 21 gun salute. For those about to rock, fire, we salute you. April Wine has a song. She's a roller, a high roller baby, and then they sing bye, 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 bye over and over. Florida Georgia Line with Luke Bryan had a #1 song called This Is How We Roll. This is how we do. We're burning down the night, shooting bullets at the moon, baby. This is how we roll. Here we go. Blinded by the Light, written by Bruce Springsteen, #1 song for Manfred Mann's Earth Band. I wasn't going to do maybe necessarily, there's so many lyrics, but, he says, with a boulder on my shoulder, feeling kind of older, I tripped the merry-go-round. With this unpleasant sneezing and wheezing, the calliope crashed to the ground. Some all-hot half-shot was heading for the hot spot, snapping his fingers and clapping his hands. Save the buckshot, turn up the band. The chorus goes, he was blinded by the light, revved up like a deuce. Deuce is a name for the devil. Another runner in the night, blinded by the light. Some brimstone baritone anticyclone rolling stone preacher from the east says dethrone the dictaphone, hit it in his funny bone. That's where they expect at least. Some new mown chaperone was standing in the corner all watching the young girls dance, and some fresh sown moonstone was messing with his frozen zone to remind him of the feeling of romance. They repeat the chorus. Little early pearly came by in her curly whirly and asked me if I needed a ride. Well, I jumped up, turned around, spit in the air, fell on the ground, and asked him which was the way back home. He said, take a right at the light, keep going straight until night. Reminds me of Peter Pan. And then you're on your own. Now in Zanzibar, a shooting star was riding in a sidecar humming a lunar tune. Yes, and the avatar said, blow the bar, but first remove the cookie jar. We're going to teach these boys to laugh too soon. And some kidnapped handicap was complaining he caught the clap from some mousetrap he bought last night. Well, I unsnapped his skull cap, and between his ears I saw a gap and figured he'd be all right. He was blinded by the light, cut loose like a deuce, another runner in the night. Mama always told me not to look into the sights of the sun, but oh mama, that's where the fun is. I was blinded. And they talk about make it through the night. So, and Stairway to Heaven and Hotel California, they're two of the biggest rock songs of all time.
Yep.
And they both contain many of the same elements. I found, one's a lost or confused traveler, that's on a path or a road. You have a lady shining a light to show the way, which could be heaven or hell, possibly. And then you have a wind, you have a spirit, and then you have a piper or voices calling. Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon seems to recap our lives as it starts with a heartbeat at the very beginning and Speak to Me, and which leads to the song Breathe, and it goes on to Time. And in the reprise of Breathe, they say, far away across the field, the tolling of the iron bell calls the faithful to the nearest to hear the softly spoken magic spells. And Great Gig of the Sky says, I'm not afraid of dying. And the whole album ends with Brain Damage. He says, I'll see you on the dark side of the moon. And then the eclipse. Everything under the sun is in tune, but the sun is eclipsed by the moon.
And just going back to Stairway to Heaven, I think it was Robert Plant that wrote that song. And he said that he didn't know where it came from. He just kind of pulled it out of the ether. He kind of channeled that song. It just came to him, and he says that he thinks it was like this timeless song that was just out there waiting for the right channel to be brought into reality, and he was the channel for it, which is a very interesting thing to say.
So it was like automatic writing, or he was kind of, his body was taken over and somebody else wrote the song for him.
That's right.
And, it's a very interesting song when you look into the, symbolism of the piper that wants to call you, and there's a white lady with a white light that's showing you the way, and it's
an amazing song, and it really draws you in. I don't know how other people feel about it, but I find it's a fascinating piece of music, and it's a wonderful song to listen to, even though there are probably quite sinister tones to it, particularly when you get into the whole idea of backmasking. And Stairway to Heaven is one of the most famous songs which is supposed to have subliminal messages encoded in it backwards. When you play the track backwards, there's a point where you hear the phrase, "Here's to my sweet Satan." And there are others as well. But there's something about it that just draws you in, I find.
Absolutely. And I've seen that in so many different other songs by other groups too, where they talk about a lady. It's very common to, like the song Lady by Styx, and they could be saying Lady of the Morning, they'd be saying how great they are, but I mean, it may not even be singing about a woman. It could be there, because in witchcraft, or they call the goddess Lady. It's the Lord and the Lady, so, or is it The Goddess in the Doorway was, an album by, Mick Jagger, so, there's that aspect as well.
So just on the subject of, how you might be able to break this cycle or this recycle, going by your theory of what happens to souls after death. Many authors and researchers in this field through the ages have put forward the view that reincarnation is all about your spirit soul gaining the experiences that it needs or it desires, and learning the lessons and learning the skills that it needs to ascend to higher levels of consciousness. And when you've completed that process, which probably takes several lifetimes, and you've learned all that you desire to learn, you can then break this karmic cycle and, go off to another form of existence. And I wonder how you feel that ties into your theory of, if a soul is tricked into going into the light through not understanding the true nature of what it is, are they then recycled, and that they have to bear the burden of coming back and living another human life and trying to get it right next time?
Well, that's the thing in reincarnation, which is basically recycling the soul, right? It's reincarceration. The problem with that is you don't remember your memories. And, if you're being punished, for something you did in a past life or rewarded, we're not even aware of it. So how can you learn from your mistakes if you have to look at who created all these different religions, okay? And I did that. I went on Google or Wikipedia, and I was reading about the different major religions like Hinduism and Buddhism, and I found that start with Hinduism because it's probably the earliest one, but I found that all the major religions were given to humanity by the princes of elite royal families or nobility. In Hinduism, the teachings of Hinduism were largely based on Lord Krishna, who was a prince, the eighth son born to the princess Devaki. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna convinces the hero Arjuna on the battlefield why fighting the war against his own family is just. And then Buddhism was given to us by Gautama Buddha. He was born in a royal Hindu family, and according to most traditional biography, the Buddha's father and mother were King Sadananda and Queen Mahamaya. I'm not very good with pronouncing this stuff, but Buddha taught that suffering was part of life and that one should suppress desires. And then Judaism was given to us from Moses, their most important prophet, really the first 5 books of the Old Testament, the Torah, or Torah, which was said to be written by him in the 10 Commandments, which God supposedly gave him while on Mount Sinai. He was conveniently said to have been found in a reed basket in the Nile River by the princess daughter of the Pharaoh and adopted by the Egyptian royal family and raised in the court of the Pharaoh. So Moses was treated as an Egyptian prince. He was raised as one. And then you have a DreamWorks picture, which made a famous animated movie based on that name, The Prince of Egypt. Muhammad, the founder of Islam, was the son of the most noble family in Arabia and married a wealthy businesswoman from a very prominent family in an elite tribe who was given the title Princess of Quraysh. And from the United Press International, on October 10, 1986 article entitled Muslims in Buckingham Palace, it says, quote, mixed in with Queen Elizabeth's blue blood is the blood of the Muslim prophet Muhammad, according to Burke's Peerage, the genealogical guide to royalty. Brooks Baker said the British royal family is descended from Muhammad through the Arab kings of Seville who once ruled Spain. So you have, in Christianity, it was based on the life and teachings of Jesus, of course. Jesus was in the line of King David, and he was the source for the controversial books Holy Blood, Holy Grail, and the Da Vinci Code. And, you know, the kings and royal families, a lot of them claim that they're descended from Jesus. So we can also see how much power the royal family had in the creation of Christianity and the very fact that Emperor Constantine officially made it the state religion, and he was just a bloody murderer. Also, you have King James commissioning the translation of the King James Bible. There's even 2 books in the Old Testament named Kings and Kings 2. So you can see the Christianity in the Bible is very much rooted in politics. And in fact, you had counselors which were to decide which books to include and exclude from the Bible, which is why a lot of those books about the archons and stuff were not included in the Bible. It's in the Dead Sea Scrolls. And so, you know, if you have a small group of people with enormous wealth and power, and you want to control the masses and prevent them from revolting and taking all the gold and power from them, and you want to placate them, then what's the best way? You promise them eternal life for being good and doing good works and playing on their fears by scaring them with an eternal hell if they don't behave. It's like, you know, your parent and kids, you know, go to your room if you don't behave, or, you know, reward you with a treat. So they're instructed to turn the other cheek and forgive others for their sins, or they'll be judged and they're told the meek shall inherit the earth. Jordan Maxwell pretty much, I'm not going to go into it. I was going to read a lot of what he said, but he's talked about how the sun was God's son and it's the light of the world and it was our savior because, at nighttime it got dark and cold and the animals would come. But if you look at the movie, or the documentary, Zeitgeist, it's a lot of the section on religion was based on what Jordan Maxwell said in his documentary, The Naked Truth. And so I'm not going to repeat it all here, but, reincarnation, it's the recycling of souls. And so you reincarnate over and over again to learn lessons. And once all the karma has been overcome, we graduate from this earthly plane. And, but like I said, how can you be punished for something you don't remember? It just doesn't make any sense. And so why go to such extremes? I mean, there's ways, like you go to classes at university and, I don't know, it just seems like it's just too extreme when you have people dying and 100 people dying in an airplane crash, or a baby dying, childbirth or whatnot.
Exactly. It doesn't seem to make sense to us on a human level, but maybe the decision was made on another level with a greater plan in mind that we just don't understand.
Oh, that's very possible. But every time I read stuff like that, which I thought was the case with Journey of the Souls by Michael Newton, where he'd take people into their in-between life state and they would explain why they had to go through all the suffering. But, one of his clients, it said it took him like 450 years, or I can't remember, it was 800 years. It was just to conquer jealousy, It seems like that's not necessary. Like if you have an all-knowing, all-powerful God, it seems like he would have a better way. I mean, look at what we have here on Earth, where it's all a predator based food chain where creatures have to kill each other and eat each other just to survive.
Well,
I mean,
exactly,
why not have
exactly.
it be more loving? Where, I mean, you got plants that live off photosynthesis, from the light of the sun.
And this is something people rarely think about, just every day in nature all around the world. Just think of the death and suffering of creatures just to provide the food chain, as you say.
And we think we're at the top of the food chain, but,
well, we like to think that, yeah. If there was indeed a benevolent entity, which a lot of people like to call God, that set this reality into place, why did it have to be done with so much horrific suffering going on a daily basis?
It really
what's that all
sense.
About? Why does there have to be?
And why can't we, talk to God? I mean, why is it so hard if you got to pray for years and years and years, just to speak to God? And even then you're lucky if you do, I guess. But I mean, here on earth, you want to talk to your father, you just basically pick up the phone, and most times he'll pick up and you can talk to him, but not with, our supposed, heavenly father,
Well, yeah, it's all part of the puzzle of life that those of us that like to think, muse upon daily, and it's all food for thought.
And so touching on that reincarnation cycle that I was talking about, and if we're going to the sun, you have this Re prefix, R-E, and it comes from Ra or Re, the Egyptian sun god. You have solar rays, rays of sunshine, Ray-Ban sunglasses are very popular. So the subconscious mind has made the connection. So you have all these words that like redo, repeat, return, rerun, retry, react, reenact, reset, refresh, rehearse, reentry, reproduce, relive, rebirth, reborn, resurrection. Where was I going to go with this? I got so much stuff I wanted to cover. But, so like in religion, during a revival, a reverend or a mini-star gives a sermon telling you you're born in sin and need to be saved from sin. Sin was like the Akkadian moon god. I think it was Akkadian. And he does a ceremony for the congregation and asks you to repent so you can be redeemed and reborn. So you give your heart and soul to the resurrected Son of God, Jesus. Then you sing Alleluia to the Almighty God or Mighty Owl God. You think of Bohemian Grove and they have this 40-foot stone statue of an owl, right? Well, it's the owl god. So you pray and you say Amen or Amen, like you were saying at the end of the prayer. And yeah, it was an Egyptian, god of the moon, and he had a ram's head or a goat's head. Ah or Yah is one of the Egyptian moon gods. Jah was Yah in Hebrew, the Yahweh of the Bible. So, we constantly say see Yah later, or, we say see Yah as you depart. So you have to understand that Not, N-O-T-T, and day are Norse gods of the night and day, which are governed by the moon and sun. So in the Lord's Prayer, we pray, lead us not into temptation. Well, are we talking about the God not, or are we, what I'm saying? There's a double meaning there. And you say, give us today our daily bread, everything we've bred, it could be children or anything. So Napoleon said, religion is what keeps the poor man from murdering the rich.
Okay, well, we'll have to start to wrap up here, Wayne, but it's been fascinating stuff, and it's the sort of podcast that I think people need to go back to and listen 2 or 3 times. I certainly feel the need to do that myself. There's a lot of information there, and 2 or 3 goes at it will enable people to absorb it properly, I would suggest. But just remind people where they can go to find out more of your research online. Also, do you ever do any public talks on this stuff, and have you got any videos out there as well?
No, this is the first public thing I've ever done, and
okay.
So I was thinking about putting something up on YouTube, and I've kind of written a book that was fictional, but I didn't really do anything with it. I was going to do a screenplay that would do a lot of this, but no, this is the first thing, and I'm open to doing public talks, and it would be good to have video or images that I could show instead of just trying to talk everybody through it. But if you go to www.trickedbythelight.com, and that's my website, and I get into so much more than what I've even mentioned here on this show. And there was some stuff I wasn't able to get to, like all the movie examples, which are more and more convincing, like, you have Star Trek. I know that on Art Bell's show, Leonard Nimoy was on, and he told Art that midway through the first season, he said that some people came to him and told him that they were going to use his character to introduce the public to this other, I guess, I wish I had the quote in front of me because I hate to like put words in people's mouths. But he was basically alluding to the fact that they were going to use this character to educate the populace about this aliens that are out there and that they're going to come here in the future. So I thought that was pretty telling.
Okay. All right then, Wayne. Thanks for spending time with us today, and thanks for sharing your views and your findings.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Thanks for inviting me on the show.
This is just a wrap.
Vibrations, I'm picking up. Vibrations, I'm picking up.